Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Have you ever met someone who hasn't heard the story of the Titanic? It's unlikely, isn't it? The tragic tale of this unsinkable ship has been told and retold for over a century. We've all heard the official story. A massive iceberg, a catastrophic collision, and the tragic loss of over 1,500 lives. But what if I told you that some survivors had a very different version of events? A version that has nothing to do with an iceberg. Today, we're diving deep into one such account, a first-hand experience from a survivor that might make you rethink everything you know about the Titanic. Our story centers around Vagenak Bayrat, a 25-year-old Armenian publicist who was one of the fortunate souls to survive that fateful night in April 1912. Bayrat's account of the sinking differs wildly from the widely accepted narrative, and his story raises some intriguing questions about what really happened to the Titanic. Before we get into the mystery, let's set the stage. It's April 10, 1912, and the Titanic is about to embark on its maiden voyage from Southampton to New York. Vagenak, tasked with taking a collection of books to America, was on board, eager for the journey ahead. Little did he know, the adventure of a lifetime was about to become a nightmare. Vagenak described his journey in vivid detail in his memoirs. He was an optimistic young man, excited about his future in America. He had recently published some books with his father, a renowned Armenian writer, and he was eager to bring them to the New World. But his adventure took a dark turn on the night of April 14th. It was just after midnight when Vagenak and his cabin mates, two Englishmen and a young Frenchman named Morin, were jolted awake by a loud explosion. The lights went out and the ship shuddered violently. Vagenak recalled the chaos that ensued. The eerie silence in the corridors, the panicked crew, and the lifeboats being prepared for women and children. At this moment, Vagenak and Morin faced a harrowing decision. With no lifeboat in sight for them, they decided to take their chances in the freezing Atlantic waters. Imagine the terror they must have felt as they leaped into the dark, icy sea, knowing that survival was far from guaranteed. And then, Vagenak's memory goes blank. The next thing he knew, he was waking up on the deck of another ship, the RMS Carpathia, the first ship to arrive at the scene after the disaster. But how did he get there? And what happened during those lost hours? As Vagenak would later learn, he owed his life to a woman named Mrs. Astor, who had insisted that he be brought aboard the lifeboat. She claimed him as her son even though she had tragically lost her own husband on the Titanic. Vagenak survived, but his story didn't end there. What makes his account so fascinating is what he didn't remember: an iceberg. Instead of the infamous iceberg, Vagenak spoke of an explosion. He wasn't alone in this. Other survivors also mentioned hearing what sounded like explosions coming from deep within the ship. Could this mean that something else, something more sinister, led to the Titanic's demise? One theory suggests that a coal fire, burning long before the ship left port, could have severely weakened the Titanic's hull. Some experts point to a large dark mark visible on the ship's side as evidence of this fire. When the Titanic collided with the iceberg, the compromised hull may have shattered more easily, leading to the catastrophic flooding. Supporters of this theory argue that the fire burned uncontrollably for days, weakening the ship from within. When the iceberg struck, it wasn't just the collision that caused the ship to sink. It was a perfect storm of structural damage and bad luck. But what if the iceberg wasn't involved at all? Another controversial theory suggests that the Titanic was struck by a German U-boat. Survivors like Vagenak reported seeing a searchlight in the water after the ship went down. Could it have been a submarine surfacing to survey its target? While this theory is widely dismissed due to the peacetime in 1912 and the technical limitations of U-boats at the time, it still lingers as a fascinating alternative explanation. So what really happened to the Titanic? Was it a tragic accident involving an iceberg, or was there something more to the story? Unfortunately, we may never know for sure. But what we do know is that the Titanic continues to captivate our imaginations, and the stories of its survivors, like Vagenak Bayrat, add new layers of mystery to this enduring legend. As we close this chapter on the Titanic, we're left with more questions than answers. But perhaps that's what keeps the story alive: the mystery, the intrigue, and the human drama that played out on that fateful night over a century ago. Do you believe an explosion might have taken down the Titanic? Or do you think the iceberg story is the true explanation? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this deep dive into one of history's greatest mysteries, Be sure to like this video and subscribe for more captivating stories.